Carl Legger says he's interested in the next-gen car, and Ryan Preece says he's close to finalizing a deal for 2022 and hopes to announce it soon. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to first talk about a couple of paint schemes. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Kyle Busch's 2022 Interstate Battery Scheme that we're going to see in 2022. This is honestly my favorite paint scheme that is revealed with the next-gen placement of the cars. First of all, they utilize the sponsorship very well on this car. Second, the Interstate Lightning Scheme. You can't go wrong with that. This has been one of my favorite paint schemes over the last couple years, and the number placement on the car is absolutely picture perfect. It looks absolutely incredible, absolutely great, and I think it looks really great, and I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out of the racetrack in 2022. I hope it's used a lot more than what we saw off the last couple years, but we'll have to wait and see. But this paint scheme looks really good, to be honest with you. And the other paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Joey Logano's 2022 AAA insurance schemes that we're going to see at Auto Club and Texas. The Texas scheme, in my opinion, looks pretty good. In my opinion, I do think they do a really good job of utilizing the sponsorship placement. The Texas scheme, though, is a little bit, not the Texas scheme, the Auto Club scheme, I should say, is a little bit in my opinion. It's not absolutely amazing. I think that basically they put it in the wrong position where the AAA goes for the Auto Club race. I understand why they're moving it up. It makes a ton of sense. But at the same time, I really don't like the Auto Club scheme as much as the Tech scheme. But it's not overall the worst schemes, in my opinion. I think they're two of the best ones. I think Team Penske, along with Joe Gibbs, have done a pretty good job when it comes to sponsor utilization. I do think teams, as the years go on, they're going to get better with it. But this paint schemes look all right, and we'll hopefully see these cars at Texas and Auto Club. And now go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to unfortunately take this episode to a little bit of a sour note. We're going to first talk about Steve Richards, as unfortunately Steve Richards has passed away from his really long-fought battle with COVID-19. Steve Richards has been a PRN reporter for a very long time. I've known Steve Richards for many years, as a guy who's been in the PRN booth for a very long time, and he's been in a very tough fight with COVID-19. Unfortunately, it got so bad he was put into an induced coma. He apparently had been getting better, but unfortunately, he passed away here a couple of days ago. So my prayers and condolences do go out to the family of Steve Richards and also the PRN community as well, the people that work at PRN. My prayers go out to them as well. And it really sad and really unfortunate to hear that. The other person that unfortunately passed away, we'll jump onto the next part of this, is Bob Keselowski. Bob Keselowski passed away yesterday at the age of 70 years old. Bob Keselowski had been fighting cancer for the last 2 years, and unfortunately, he passed away last night. They were saying this about a week ago that most likely that Bob was most likely going to unfortunately pass away from his longtime battle. He's unfortunately going to lose his battle with cancer. For a lot of you don't know, Bob Keselowski was an ARCA champion, won 1 or 2 ARCA championships, and was a Truck Series pioneer, one of the original drivers of the Truck Series, and helped a lot of young drivers into development and stuff. My prayers and condolences do go out to the Keselowski family during this tragic time. It really sucks what happened today, and like I said, my prayers and condolences do go out to the Keselowski family, because I don't wish that on my worst enemy, and it's really sad to see that. So, like I said, my prayers and condolences do go out to the Keselowski family. It really sucks what happened, and I wish the best of luck to them. Hope things get better for them soon, because it's really unfortunate what happened. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt Lucas. As Matt Lucas is going to become the team manager and crew chief for Chase Purdy and the number 61 truck in 2022. For those who don't know, Matt Lucas worked in Joe Gibbs Racing, I think as a team manager or fabricator or something like that. I'm not sure what position he worked in, but he worked in the Joe Gibbs Racing stable, and now will be transitioning over to work with Hattori Racing. I'm not entirely sure how much experience Matt Lucas has as a crew chief. I don't think he has too much experience as a crew chief. I don't think I've ever seen him crew chief an NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series car in the past, but I hope that Matt Lucas can do really well to help Chase Purdy, because let's be honest, I think that Chase Purdy is going to need a lot of help next year, because Chase Purdy absolutely was not really good in 2020, and I'm not really having that high of expectations for him going into 2022. So what I'm hoping and praying is Matt Lucas can come in there and help Chase Purdy out, become a much better driver. But I hope he does really well next year. Good luck to him, and hopefully he'll do really well to help him out next year. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Atlanta, as Atlanta repave is officially complete. They had basically a video go out basically shooting off fireworks stuff, and the Atlanta repave that's been worked on since July has officially been complete. There is going to be a Goodyear tire test that's most likely going to be taking place during a couple weeks in the first week of January. There will be a Goodyear tire test, and then there will be the Daytona test right after that on January 11th and 12th. The Atlanta repave is basically going to be classified most likely as a super speedway, though, like I said, there is a Goodyear tire test. That's going to happen, but most likely we're going to see a mini super speedway. The track is going to have 28 degrees of banking, which is only 3 or 4 degrees smaller than Daytona and Talladega. So they're basically going to classify this as mini super speedway. So most likely this track will end up being with the 510 horsepower package, but that will be determined by the test that comes up really, really soon. Now, I'm not overall the biggest fan of the repave, because honestly, they didn't really have to do this repave. So I think they only really did this repave to be on, well, this reconfiguration. Only reason they really did this, I think, because I think they thought they were going to get 550 horsepower, but when they announced the 670, I think they're thinking, well, why do we go ahead and just do this? Why didn't we just go ahead and repave the track? So I'm very interested to see what happens when we have the Atlanta races, because again, we're going to have a Goodyear tire test to really determine what's going to happen there. But it is what it is, and the repave is officially complete at Atlanta. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the LA Coliseum. Now, this was reported a couple days ago by Adam Stern, but he said NASCAR broke ground on the 7-figure LA Coliseum project today, and it should be completed a month from now. For those who don't know, NASCAR is going to be going into the LA Coliseum, and we'll be moving the Clash from the Daytona International Speedway over to the LA Coliseum, and the season kicks off on February 6th. And they started breaking ground a couple days ago for the racetrack. And there's been a lot of renderings that have come out. We showed you guys these renderings a couple days ago, and I will say that the renderings, in my honestly personal opinion, I think the renderings for the track look absolutely gorgeous and look absolutely incredible. The fact that it looks as good as it does, I think looks really, really freaking awesome. And I'm really looking forward to this race for sure, especially with 2022. I think that we could see one of the most exciting NASCAR seasons in a very, very long time. I think next year is going to be really, really fun, and I think the season is going to kick off on a perfect note. I would not be shocked if the race turns into a demolition derby, but they broke ground on it yesterday. I'm really, really excited about that. What they reported a couple days ago, I think was past weekend, was that they're expecting 60% of the new fans coming in. They're expecting them to be new NASCAR fans, which I think is really, really great to see, that 60% of fans that are in NASCAR for going to this race, I should say, are fans that have never been to a NASCAR race before, which for them, they're getting a really, really exciting treat, and they're going to probably have something really, really fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to this race for sure. Really excited about that. I'm glad that they officially have broken ground. There have been a lot of concerns that they may be close to not have enough time, but they've got a month, and they're investing about $1 million. So I'm excited about this, and I'm looking forward to this for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Indianapolis 500. It was reported yesterday by Adam Stern that IndyCar and IMS is expecting next year to be its best in revenue since 2016, when 350,000 people attended the 100th running of the Indy 500 per Mark Miles, citing in part projected jumps in TV money sponsorship. Ticket sales for the 2022 Indy 500 are tracking up from 2019. This is really, really great to see that the Indy 500 is once again having a big rejuvenation. This past year, Julio Castroneves won in front of, I think, like 180,000 people. I think they said around 180, 170,000 people showed up to this race, which it kind of felt like the energy of a race with 350,000 people. But the Indy 500, I no doubt, is getting a lot of attraction over the last couple of years. And a couple of reasons I think the Indy 500 is having a huge increase. Number one, most watched season in IndyCar in almost 25 years. It was one of the most watched IndyCar seasons in many, many years. And I think there's one person I really think has really impacted Indy 500's growth. A couple people, I think. First of all, Romain Grosjean from Formula One. A lot of people know who Romain Grosjean is from Formula One, especially after the fiery crash. A lot of people know who he is, and they were coming over to see how good he was going to be in IndyCar, and it was really one of the big standouts. The other driver, Jimmie Johnson. A lot of NASCAR fans, like myself, were very intrigued to see how Jimmie Johnson was going to do. IndyCar gained a lot of fans from that. So I think that's a really key reason why we saw a huge increase in fans watching in IndyCar this year. And I hope that we could see more show up to these races. And I hope that we could see a record number of people come to the races. I think it'd be really, really awesome, really, really cool. And hopefully we will see that happen soon, because I think if we can see that many people come in, the better it's going to be for the fans. So that's really, really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to see how many people show up to the races. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Dover Motorsports. As the official link has been officially complete that Speedway Motorsports has completed its purchase of Dover Motorsports Incorporated at $3.61 per share, which is around $131.5 million. First of all, this means that there are going to be no more publicly traded companies, as Speedway Motorsports does not have any publicly traded companies. They're not a company that is on the stock. But both tracks that will come with that, including Dover and Nashville Fairgrounds, both tracks were part of that Dover Motorsports Incorporated family. World Technology Raceway was actually part of that family at one point, but they basically broke off. It became its own independent contractor. But Dover International Speedway, we'll talk about Dover Motor Speedway in a second, but Dover and Nashville have been bought up by this. What this means is that they're most likely going to have leeway down the road in regards to the future of scheduling. I'll be honest with you, I think Dover's future long-term is going to be very uncertain, considering you have the potential of North Wilkesboro coming back really, really soon, and you also have the potential of the National Fairgrounds potentially returning here in the next couple of years. I think it's not going to be long for both these tracks are ready to go. North Wilkesboro is currently being worked on as we speak right now, and of course, National Fairgrounds, there's a very strong possibility that a NASCAR Cup Series race, pending what the Fair Board says, there's a potential that a NASCAR Cup Series race could happen as early as 2024. So the future of Dover and Nashville, even, I think Nashville's contract is going to remain. I think Nashville will remain as a track on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. I think that they can have coexist with having two racetracks. I just think don't have them in the same time period. But I think it really, really is. I mean, it's cool to see that Dover Motorsports has been bought up by Speedway Motorsports. There's more leeway on the schedule for changes stuff if they want to make big changes. But Dover Motor Speedway has been around for a very, very long time. So definitely really, really interesting that this has happened. And it's crazy to see that this has happened. I think it's been one of the biggest stories that has happened over the last couple months. Really, really crazy. And we'll see what implications happen long-term down the road. Because I'll tell you this, I think that there's going to be a lot more implications than people are giving credit for. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Dover Motor Speedway. As Dover is officially changing its name from Dover International Speedway to Dover Motorsports Motor Speedway in 2022. Dover has had multiple different names. They were Dover Downs for, I think, 1969 to, like 1999 or something like that. And they've been Dover National Speedway from, I think, 2001 or 2002 up until 2022. And then they're going to be changing the name to Dover Motor Speedway. This, of course, is because of the fact that Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, like I just talked about a minute ago, is because they have gone ahead and purchased Dover and Nashville Super Speedway. And there's also some logo change as well. And I think these logo changes absolutely look really, really good. And for a lot of people worry about Miles the Monster leaving, the good news is Miles the Monster looks like is going to be staying, which I think overall is a really, really big positive right there in that direction, that they're not getting rid of Miles the Monster. I think Miles the Monster has been a major, major mainstay and a major, major reason why a lot of fans love to go to Dover Motor Speedway. Like I said, though, I talked about a minute ago, I do think that Dover's future long-term is going to be in question because of this purchase. I would not be surprised that in the next couple of years, Dover, unfortunately, loses its only NASCAR Cup Series date. And that's really, really unfortunate considering, like I said, Dover has been around for over 50 years, coming up to this 53rd season on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. But you think about this one, I think that Dover's going to want to go, they're going to want to go, of course, getting some of these smaller tracks. So that is another story that we're going to have to keep our eyes on long-term down the road. But I'm really intrigued to see what happens long-term down the road. And that is the stories on Dover Motor Speedway and Dover Motor Speedway Incorporated. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ryan Newman. As Ryan Newman posted on his Twitter that he is going to be closing down his current Ryan Newman Motorsports website store, and this is basically announced yesterday, he'd be shutting it down here later today, that he'd be shutting down his Ryan Newman Motorsports store. Now, a lot of people were very, very intrigued to see what this could mean. Now, this honestly could just mean that Ryan Newman is going to open up a store. That's very, very possible. Ryan Newman could just be opening up a new store on his Twitter pages, and that basically is going to be going to a new store right there. However, I do think that there might be a little more implications than meets the eye in regards to this. I think it is very, very possible that Ryan Newman is slowly but surely trying to basically maybe reveal to us that maybe he's going to retire from NASCAR racing, at least on the full-time basis. I'm going to tell you right now that I do not think Ryan Newman will be racing full-time. However, I do think Ryan Newman has potential to run on a part-time stint. Ryan Newman has not ruled out the possibility of maybe making some one-off starts and maybe trying to come back. He says he wants to come back next year, but he did say that he has not had anybody basically call him at this point, which for me, that as a fan, if I'm a Ryan Newman fan, that is really, really concerning. And the fact that he's one of the few drivers that we really have not heard anything about in regards to potential rides going into the 2022 season. But It wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Newman, like I said, makes a couple one-off starts in 2022. I don't think he goes full-time, but I think that he'll make a couple one-off starts, maybe at Bristol Dirt if rides are potentially available, whether for the Cup Series or the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. So that's definitely interesting. Ryan Newman's store has shut down. A lot of people were talking about that, and I think that Ryan Newman is slowly starting to reveal to us that there is a very strong possibility that his shop is going to shut down. So that's really interesting story, and more probably details will come about that really, really soon, but that's really interesting story on Ryan Newman. Now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about JD Motorsports. As JD Motorsports tweeted out yesterday, that they say that they have an announcement on a full-time driver next week, and they asked people who potentially it could be, who they guess, who their driver they think could be the driver that is announced for a full-time basis in 2022. Now, there have been a couple names that I think have been mentioned in regards. First name that obviously is going to get mentioned is Ryan Vargas. Now, Ryan Vargas pretty much drove the full season for JD Motorsports in 2021. It really has kind of driven for JD Motorsports for the last couple of years. And I think he potentially could be a driver, but I'm not going to say that's the one right there. Another driver that keeps getting mentioned up is Ryan Preece. Now, Ryan Preece is a little more realistic than people think is because he actually has driven for JD Motorsports in the past. However, we'll get into what ride I think he potentially could get into because I don't think he's going to JD Motorsports. Another driver that keeps getting brought up for this potential ride is Matt DiBenedetto, because Matt DiBenedetto, a lot of people wonder, keep associating with any ride that potentially could be available, because everyone wants Matt DiBenedetto to have a good ride. Well, I think that Matty D could be a really, really good candidate who get a really good opportunity to come back. I don't think it's going to be Matt DiBenedetto. The driver that I think is going to get announced full-time, I have not really seen this driver mentioned at all, I think it's going to be Bailey Currey. Now, the reason I say Bailey Currey is, one, Bailey Currey actually drove for JD Motorsports last year and had some pretty strong runs with this team. I think maybe besides Landon Castle last year, and this is no disrespect to any other drivers that drove for their team, but Bailey Currey really did better in a lot of those races than the other drivers when they got into those rides. He ran top 15 and top 20. And very recently, he didn't have a pen emoji, but he had a basically emoji that looked like something where he basically got signed for 2022. So I think that the driver that is going to get into that car, is going to be Bailey Currey. Now, I think that, of course, Ryan Vargas, I think he's also going to return next year to JD Motorsports. But for JD Motorsports, in my opinion, do not have 4 full-time cars next year. Downsize to a 3-car team. So I think one of the biggest reasons why they've struggled is they've expanded way too much, too many cars, and I think that they need to downsize going into 2022. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think the driver that's going full-time is Bailey Currey. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Blaine Perkins. As Blaine Perkins just a few minutes ago was announced that he will be driving full-time for CR7 Motorsports in 2022 in the Truck Series, driving the number 9 truck. The number 9 truck last year had multiple drivers in their trucks. They had Colby Howard drive a couple races for them. They had Cody Roba, who is the owner of the team, drive for them. And they also have Grant Enfinger, who got quite a few top 10s in this truck last year. Now, Blaine Perkins, for a lot of you don't know, Blaine Perkins ran last year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and was really, really solid in the ARC K&N and the ARC West Series. He was really, really solid in the ARC West Series, where he competed for top 5s throughout there in 2019. And in 2021, ran a couple select races for Our Motorsports. His most notable run, of course, is leading a lot of those laps at Talladega before, I think, unfortunately, getting involved in the big one. But Blaine Perkins, I think, was really, really underrated last year when he drove those select starts for Our Motorsports. I saw a lot of times where he was competing for top 20s and top 15s, which is really, really impressive. So I think he has a lot of potential to show it next year. Now, what are my expectations for Blaine Perkins next year? Of course, number one is get a lot of experience to the best you can. So he is a driver, again, who is really, really young, but I think he has a lot of potential. But I think the goal for him is try to get some top 20s and occasionally maybe try to get some top 10s in the number 9 truck. I know, like I said, those expectations are a little bit higher for a driver who has not ran a full season, but I think that he can do it. I think he's got potential to get it done. So I'm really excited to see what Blaine Perkins can do next year. I don't think he's going to win unless it's at a super speedway, though I will say that the 9 truck has shown a lot of speed, especially at super speedway, so I would not count them out of potentially winning super speedways. But I'm very excited to see what he can do next year. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And like I said, congratulations to him going full-time with CR7 Motorsports. I think is a great candidate to work with to get up there, and I think that he has a lot of potential long-term down the road. So congratulations to Blaine Perkins, and good luck to him heading into 2022. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kasey Kahne. As it was announced yesterday that Kasey Kahne is going to drive full-time in the World of Outlaws in 2022 for his own organization, Kasey Kahne Racing, in the number 9 car. He technically is going to be a rookie as well, a very old rookie, mind you, that will be competing full-time in the World of Outlaws for the first time. Kasey Kahne was a successful driver in NASCAR, but outside of NASCAR, Kasey Kahne has had a very, very successful World of Outlaws team. In fact, Brad Sweet won the 2021 World of Outlaws Championship, and Brad Sweet basically is a driver who has done extremely well for Kasey Kahne Racing and has won championships for Kasey Kahne in the World of Outlaws. And Kasey Kahne, like I said, is going full-time with them. Kasey Kahne is a very, very solid sprint car and dirt racer as well. And I think Kasey Kahne is going to be a driver that is going to contend for the championship in 2022. I think he's going to win quite a few races. I think he's going to be competing, of course, against Brad Sweet and other drivers in that series who are really, really strong. But I think that Kasey Kahne is absolutely going to get it done in 2022. I think he's going to win races. Now, like I said, I don't think Kasey Kahne is going to win the championship next year. I just think Brad Sweet's going to be really, really tough to beat next year. But I think Kasey Kahne is going to be a really, really dark horse for the championship next year in the World of Outlaws. And I think he's going to be a very, very solid contender. And I think he's going to do really, really strong next year in 2022. So I'm very excited to see what he can do next year. And it's cool to see that Kasey Kahne is still doing racing outside of NASCAR. As we all know the story what happened to him at the end of his NASCAR career. Unfortunately, what ended up happening for Kasey Kahne, for a lot of you don't know, is Kasey Kahne basically had a lot of issues with dehydration. And the doctor basically told him to sit out of the car. And unfortunately, he decided to go ahead and call it quits in NASCAR. So the story is sad at the end of the day, but it's great to see that he's going full time. Really excited about this, and I'm glad to see that Kasey Kahne is still finding ways to continue racing in NASCAR long term down the road. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jesse Little. As was announced yesterday, that Jesse Little will be driving for Young's Motorsports in 2022. He will drive at least a dozen races in 2022 with potential of more races coming from in 2022 pending sponsorship, and the number is to be announced. Now, there have been rumors for quite a bit of time that Jesse Little was going to go to Young's Motorsports in 2022. Jesse Little, of course, the last couple years has been driving for some of the more underfunded teams, and this team is still kind of an underfunded team for Young's Motorsports. But we all remember Jesse Little first time in the NASCAR Truck Series when he drove for his own organization, and the team was very, very strong and very, very successful, where they ran sometimes in the top 10 and top 15. Now, like I said, the last couple years in Xfinity, he has not been extremely impressive. He didn't do great with JD Motorsports, and he didn't do amazing with BJ McLeod Motorsports in 2021. That being said, though, I think Jesse Little is a very, very talented driver who still knows how to get it done on the racetrack. And he's not really that old of a driver, despite being in the sport for nearly almost coming up to the 6th or 7th year, or 7th or 8th year in the NASCAR trucks or racing in general. The fact he's still a driver that has a lot of potential, I think, still to get it done. So we'll have to wait and see how many races he's going to run, what number he's going to run. I would assume he's probably either going to run the 12 or the 02 truck, considering the 02 and the 12 are the only ones available, and I expect that Spencer Boyd is going to come back in the 20. There's also another potential driver that could be announced in the near future that has been associated with this team, who's driven for them in the past. I'm not going to say use your contest because I think you'll probably know at some point who it's going to be, but I think the expectation of Jesse Little is to try to finish on a lead lap, try to get some top 25 runs, and show what you can do out there, because I think he will be a driver that impresses a lot of people. We saw how this team could do at certain points last year, including with Castrol, when they ran at the top 10 at COTA. So good luck to Jesse Little in 2022. I'm happy to see that he does have a ride for 2022. Really excited about this, and I'm glad to see that he will at least be continuing racing in 2022. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Corey Heim. As we announced yesterday, that Corey Heim will drive for Kyle Busch Motorsports in at least 15 races in 2022, with potentially more in 2022, driving the 51 track. The race that have already been confirmed that have been set for him, he'll run the opening race at Daytona and will for sure run the final 8 races of the 2022 season. That will depend on what races Kyle Busch runs in 2022. Now, it was also announced that Kyle Busch is going to run in this 51 truck for at least 5 races in 2022 as well. Corey Heim absolutely deserves this opportunity to run in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. In the ARCA Series, he was the only driver throughout the entire season that really could keep up with Ty Gibbs in the championship. And we know how strong Ty Gibbs was. But Corey Heim was the only other driver that really showed anything for Ty Gibbs in 2021. And he did make a few sled starts in the Camping World Truck Series in 2021. Before he crashed out of Darlington, that big one up front, he was contending for the win. He was basically the only drivers, maybe him and Carson Hosbar, were the only drivers that really could keep up with John Hunter Nemechek in that race before that wreck happened, and Corey Heim absolutely deserves this opportunity. And on top of that, he actually ran in the top 10 in the 51 truck in basically ended up, I think, finishing 9th in his second start, which was really, really good for a driver that doesn't have a lot of experience in trucks. He finished in the top 10. Of course, it is a Coliseum Motorsports truck, so you're expected to do well. But I think Corey Heim is absolutely a very, very talented driver. And I tell you right now, it would not shock me if Corey Heim wins next year. I think Corey Heim has a very strong chance of winning in 2022. I think he's got potential and knows what it takes to go out there and win races. And like I said, I think that Corey Heim for sure will at least get one win in 2022. I know that's a really, really bold prediction, especially for a driver with how much competition there's going to be next year in the Camping World Truck Series. I know that that's going to be something very, very tough to say. But I think Corey Heim 100% is going to win in 2022. I think he gets one win in 2022. Now, the other big question is, of course, there's 20 races set for this team next year because you have Kyle Busch will run 5 and Corey is going to run 15. What about the other 3 races? Well, I think Corey Heim will get one more race in this truck. I think he'll run maybe one more race, maybe up to 16 races. And I think the dirt races are going to be driven by Brian Brown. Brian Brown associated Rowdy Energy with, of course, if Kyle Busch's sponsor, and Rowdy Energy has been associated with Brian Brown for about a year or two now. So I think it's going to be Brian Brown who's going to get the other 2 races. But like I said, I'm really happy for Corey Heim. He absolutely 100% deserves this opportunity to have his ride going into 2022. I think he's going to be very, very successful next year. I think he's going to do really, really great. And like I said, I'm very excited to see what Corey Heim can do next year, because I think he's going to do really, really great next year. And I'm glad to see that he at least will go basically almost full-time. It's not 100% full-time, but I'm glad to see that he will basically be almost going full-time in 2022. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Brandon Brown. Now, it was reported today by Adam Stern a little bit ago that he says, Brandon Brown says, the Let's Go Brandon situation has made it challenging to get sponsors. He continues by saying, it's hard for a brand to want to attach to somebody who might be kind of divisive. If I'm going to buy Coca-Cola, why would they want to talk to me? Now, to give a little bit of backstory on the Brandon Brown situation, Brandon Brown picked up his first career NASCAR Xfinity Series win at Talladega. And he was on the front stretch, basically doing the front stretch interviews that they've been doing for the last couple years. And during that, people were starting to say, F Joe Biden. And Kelly Stavitz, who was reporting at the time on the front stretch, she said, let's go Brandon. And then right after that happened, you had a lot of conservative outlets and a lot of conservative media that were basically calling for Kelly Stavitz's head, and also were making chants against her saying, let's go Brandon. You had that really dumb piece that Tucker Carlson basically put up on Fox News saying about Brandon Brown. Now, for me, in my opinion, I want to talk about this. Brandon Brown does not, in my opinion, it really is unfortunate that Brandon Brown is struggling right now to find sponsorship for something that he really doesn't have control over. Because in my opinion, I said this a couple days ago, that I think Brandon Brown does not deserve the things that happened to him. I think Brandon Brown should be known for what he's done on the racetrack than he's done off the racetrack with this whole Let's Go Brandon stuff, especially since Brandon Brown is a driver who's been working his ass off for the last couple of years to really get a career. He's been a driver that I think's done really, really strong, and he's been working really, really hard. And he's come from a blue-collar family, a team family that's really worked extremely hard to get where they have gotten. And the fact that Brandon Brown is having trouble finding sponsorship really, really sucks. And it's unfortunate, too. It's a really unfortunate story because, in my opinion, I'm not a fan of the champ because the fact that sponsors aren't talking to him, and the fact that even the sponsors that have associated with him in the past aren't wanting to talk to him because of this whole situation, because they associate with them, they're going to basically get a lot of backlash, of course, from a lot of people. And again, I've seen a lot of people come out and support Brandon Brown, and it really, really is unfortunate. And NASCAR even put that out there, that they don't want anybody basically associating with that, and basically said that anybody was trying to trademark the Let's Go Brandon tag with NASCAR trademarking and signaling, they were going to go ahead and basically publicly sue them and send basically a lawsuit, because they said that they're not going to tolerate that when you have a driver whose career is genuinely affected. So I think that people need to realize that they need to stop. For anyone saying it's helping him, it's not helping him, because Brandon Brown's career has been negatively affected by something that really is out of his control. So for me, people need to stop saying, let's go Brandon, because I think it's really, really frustrating and a really, really bad moniker in my opinion. But it is what it is. But it really sucks to me that Brandon Brown's career is being affected by a chant that really is out of his control. And it really, really sucks in my honest opinion. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode, as we are talking about Ryan Preece. Now, Ryan Preece was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio the other day, and he says that he is very close to finalizing his 2022 plans for 2022 and hopes to announce his plans soon for 2022. Ryan Preece, of course, will not be going back to JD Doherty in 2022, as he basically lost his right, as they are going to be downsizing to a one-car operation in 2022, as they basically have gotten rid of the uncharted car. Of course, that 37 car has been uncharted. He also, in 2021, was able to pick up his first career Camp World Truck Series win with DGR Racing, which was really, really impressive to see, considering he really didn't have a lot of experience. He drove a truck that really hasn't shown a lot of speed over the last couple of years, albeit had front row backing a little bit, and he did very, very strong in that race, along with Todd Gillen, also had a little bit of that DGR back, as well as front row in that series has DGR backing. Ryan Preece, no doubt, absolutely deserves a really, really strong ride going into next year. And I'm going to talk about a couple of rides that I think Ryan Preece could be going into in 2022. The first one, of course, is Spire Motorsports. Now, Spire Motorsports, they are expected to get a second charter in the NASCAR Cup Series for 2022. And they have not announced that driver for 2022. And if I'm Spire Motorsports and I see the potential of doing multiple drivers again like they've done really the last couple of years, or having, of course, just one driver to focus on, I'm going to go with one driver to focus on and have two really, really strong drivers. Because, of course, you have Corey LaJoie, who I think is very, very underrated and has really shown a lot of pace in the 7-car for Spire. If they get Ryan Preece, that would be a really, really great addition. Of course, you also have the truck. The other Spire truck, Spire Motorsports, is going to be going to the Truck Series in 2022. And they're, of course, going to have Kevin Boney Manning, who's going to be the crew chief, and they're going to have management and stuff that's going to be really, really strong for 2022 as well. I think if you're going to want a driver that's going to pick up your team, I think Spire Motorsports would be the way to go. Another team, though, that I've heard is Sam Hunt Racing. Now, Sam Hunt Racing, they've now revealed their plans for 2022, and there's possibility that Sam Hunt Racing is going to expand in 2022 as well. There was a TikTok recently that was put out by Sam Hunt Racing showing that they were basically looking like they were going to expand for 2022, and there is also talk, of course, that Will Rogers could also get in one of those rides for 2022, because Will Rogers says he definitely has the money to go full-time, so it's possibility that he could get one of those rides next year. But I think Ryan Preece, if Sam Hunt Racing is really going to want to take the next step forward, that would be a really, really great driver to have, considering Ryan Preece can really get the best out of equipment. And Sam Hunt Racing in the past has shown top 10 and top 15 speed at points, has shown top 5 speed as well. I remember times when John Nemechek competed for top 10s. As a matter of fact, I think it was Richmond earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken. They finished in the top 5, and we're a team that was really, really fast with guys like Santino Ferrucci and, of course, Will Rogers. And Points had 2 cars on the track in 2022. So I really think that that's another team that could absolutely be a candidate for him. The final team that I think he hasn't shot at is JD Motorsports. I talked about this, so I don't think he's going to go to JD Motorsports just because, one, I know that he's had associated with them in the past, but I do not think that I don't think he's going to go to JD Motorsports in 2022. I don't think that happens. So I think that's the least likely team, but you really never know. We've been wrong many, many times, and maybe he goes there. But I'm going to tell you what team I think he's going to go to in 2022, because I think he deserves a really, really strong car. I think it's going to come, like I said, I think it's going to be either Sam Hunt Racing or Spire Motorsports, but I'm slightly leaning a little bit right now towards Spire Motorsports right now. And the reason I'm saying Spire Motorsports is Spire Motorsports needs a driver that I think is going to be very, very solid. Now, I think there's still a possibility that he goes to Sam Hunt Racing in 2022, but I think that he's going out Spire Motorsports. I've been associated with him for a while as Spire Motorsports team, and if they're going to really want to take the next step forward with 2 charter cars, mind you, because I think that JD Doherty was not really putting their stuff together for that 37 car. They were not putting the effort in as much as they were putting the effort in for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So I think that he is going to go to Spire Motorsports in 2022, but I think it's actually unfortunately going to be the truck, or well, it could be the Cup Series too, but I think he'll end up in Spire Motorsports in some capacity in 2022. But the fact and Ryan Preece is going to have a ride in 2022 is really, really great to see. He's been one of the big free agents that we really haven't not known about for 2022. But the fact that he will likely have a ride for 2022 is really, really exciting. And hopefully it's a really, really strong ride for him next year, because he absolutely deserves a great opportunity in NASCAR next year. And now go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carl Edwards. Now, Carl Edwards yesterday was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and he says on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and this was reported by Dustin Albino as well, who works at J-Ski, he says that the next-gen car interests him. But he did point this out. He says if you're asking me if I'm going to come drive a car next year, the answer is no, but it is interesting. Carl Edwards, of course, does not surprise me that he is interested in the next-gen car. We've seen a lot of drivers, even Jimmy Johnson recently, who has come out and said that the car looks really, really fun for next year. And you never know, Jimmy Johnson could come back as well. But Carl Edwards saying that it interests him is a really good thing to see, as of course Carl Edwards has not raced since 2016. And this is not the first time that we've seen Carl Edwards in the spotlight over the last couple weeks. Of course, recently he was in Kentucky, where he basically was helping out with the Tornadoes in Kentucky. I don't remember what city it was, but he was helping out in Kentucky with the Tornadoes. He also has basically at one point expressed maybe a one-off interest to come back to the sport as well. On top of that, Carl Edwards has also said in the past that, you may remember last year, it had been reported that Carl Edwards apparently was the first choice over Matt Kenseth to potentially get into the Chip Ganassi car when Kyle Larson was suspended when the sport came back in 2021 and 2020, excuse me. But he basically, unfortunately, declined that opportunity to come back to the sport. Now, I think Carl Edwards, he ruled out next year coming back, but he did not say after 2022. And I saw some people basically on Twitter, including Dave Moody, who were basically saying that Carl Edwards said he's never coming back. Carl Edwards never said, did not say never. But he did say next year. But I think 2023, there is a chance that he could come off and run. Now, I'll tell you this. I do not think Carl Edwards, when he comes back to the sport, if he does come back to the sport, I do not think that he will come back on a full-time basis. I think it will be like 1 or 2 starts maybe every single year, but I don't think Carl Edwards is going to come back full-time. And Carl Edwards said he'd probably be the slowest driver out there. That being said, though, I disagree with Carl Edwards on that. Like I said, I know Carl Edwards has not raced in 5 years, so we really don't know. But I think Carl Edwards is still, even after 5 years, I think he would still be very, very solidly competitive. Now, he also mentioned, of course, he's been across the Atlantic recently, but I really think that Carl Edwards has a strong chance of coming back in 2023, at least on a one-off start. I want to see it happen. I think a lot of fans, including myself, really want to see how, because I think a lot of fans, and I've been really one of the biggest Carl Edwards fans. Of course, I'm from Missouri, so of course I'm going to support Carl Edwards, but the guy has a really, really great personality, and I think when he left the sport, number one, when it was announced in 2017 that he was leaving the sport, I was extremely shocked. But at the same time, I really would like to see Carl Edwards at least make a one-off start in 2023. I don't think he needs to come back on a full-time basis. I don't think he's going to be extremely competitive, but you never know. I think he comes back. I think he has a chance of coming back in 2023. I know he's basically been trolling us saying, oh, I thought about coming back basically on this side because my career, he felt like his career was basically complete because basically left the sport in 2016. I think because of the health issues of Dale Earnhardt Jr. with the concussion stuff, I think that was a big factor into why Carl Edwards basically retired. But I think Carl Edwards, I would not 100% count out the possibility. I know people will disagree with me on this, but I think that there is a very slight chance that he could come back long-term and maybe make a one-off start. I want to at least see Carl Edwards make one more return to the sport. I know he's been at points, been spotted at the racetrack. He was spotted at Texas, I think it was 2017, and he's been spotted at points at places and stuff. But I really want to see Carl Edwards at least make a one-off return. I think a lot of fans, even people, drivers stuff, would be really, really happy to see Carl Edwards at one point make a return to sports. So I hope it does happen. I'm not going to say it's 100% likely, but fingers crossed. Again, the next-gen car is supposed to be a car that is supposed to bring the car back into the driver's hands. And Carl Edwards, like I said, was not a big fan of the 550 horsepower package, which is a really, really big reason why it happened. But fingers crossed Carl Edwards comes back. I think you're going to see some potential other, you never know, maybe some other drivers make a comeback one point. Maybe Carl Edwards, maybe Clint Bowyer, maybe Jimmy Johnson at some point. But I really think that there is a chance, there is a slight chance, in my opinion, long-term, that Carl Edwards could come back. But the fact that he has been interested in the next-gen car has been something really, really great to see. And maybe down the road, we could see Carl Edwards make a return to NASCAR in the Cup Series on a one-off start. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my pages as well. Let's get you over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What do you think the chances of Carl Edwards potentially coming back to NASCAR? Do you think that there's a very strong possibility he comes back or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories we discussed here today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. This is going to be the last video for a couple days. I will not be back for the last couple of days as I will be off tomorrow and Saturday. And it is the Christmas holidays, so you won't see me till after Christmas. So for all you watching this, Merry Christmas, and I hope you all have a really, really good Christmas. So I'll see you guys in a couple days, and we'll be back on YouTube for a couple days. So hope you all have a really, really strong Christmas, and I will see you guys next time for some more great and awesome motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.